Welcome back to our daily show. Here's CJ. You know you wanted to listen to ELO that long. It's all good. Hey, did you see this George Washington cherry story?
No.
You're not. Oh my goodness! Hold on here.
Local history, CJ.
I know, but hold on. This is really cool. They found a bunch of cherries that are still preserved in George Washington's basement.
Oh my gosh!
Isn't that wild?
That's really cool. Can you eat them?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good. I don't know. I've eaten worse. But they found like 30 jars that were perfectly preserved, and it was really interesting. However, you know what else is interesting? Smallpox. And you wrote about it, and we couldn't get the old man in here today, but that's okay.
That's all right.
But I know that you wrote a great story, and how much research went into this one?
Well, quite a bit, because I didn't want to get like something worldwide wrong, and also because smallpox is one of the most interesting topics that I think exists in my job, because and I think part of that is because it's been eradicated, we don't have like the same sort of personal I don't want to say connection, but like none of us know anyone that has died of smallpox, so there's not like an emotional component of it. It just feels magical that something that was around for 3,000 years has been eradicated. And there are a whole bunch of factors why. One of the most interesting ones that I discovered, I didn't know about this, was that part of why they could eradicate it is that it doesn't have any animal reservoirs. So there are no animals that also have smallpox. It was a fully human, virus. And so, like the plague, you can't ever fully get rid of the plague because there might be a rat somewhere that has it, the Black Plague. Whereas when all humans were vaccinated or had gotten it and then were immune afterwards, we were done. And that was it.
That's so wild. Now, is there still smallpox in other parts of the world?
No, it is fully globally eradicated. And that was a huge, huge deal, because it was eradicated in the United States and in Europe and other parts of the world before the late 1970s. But the very last cases, and this was another thing I discovered, there's variola major, which is like the smallpox that 30% of the people that get it die. Natural immunity and other things have a factor in that, but it's got about a 30% death rate. And then there's variola minor, which is much less fatal. But the last person to have naturally acquired smallpox with the major was in 1975, and it was a 3-year-old in Bangladesh, and she survived. And she was isolated at home with guards posted, because, I mean, this was like the last person in the world. They didn't want it to spread. There was a house-to-house vaccination campaign within a 1.5-mile radius of her home, and they were able to contain it. And then 2 years later, in 1977, Ali Malin was the last person to have naturally acquired smallpox caused by variola minor. He was a cook in Somalia, and he recovered as well. But the coolest thing about him was that he went on to work on the polio eradication campaign. So he died of malaria working on that. But yeah, I mean, he was the last person to have smallpox and then went on to help the world with polio. So
man, and then to end it with malaria, though, is pretty brutal.
I mean, malaria is not a great way.
No, but how did we act around smallpox? Because because I'm kind of big into colonial America, I find it really fascinating. And like when yellow fever started to spread, people literally left town and went to other parts of the secluded themselves. What did we do here locally whenever there was, smallpox going around? Or maybe, was it like seasons, like flu season? Was there a smallpox season?
I don't know exactly what was a factor in that. I think it was more often that just somebody showed up with smallpox and it spread. And I think Madison County, because it was pretty highly populated and we had a lot of industry here, people were in close enough contact that it could really spread. And that was part of why, what I talked about in the article is 100 years ago, we had the most smallpox in the state.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we were a pretty sick community.
We were. There wasn't that 30% fatality rate. So I don't know if it was the major or the minor, or if it was just that enough people had acquired some natural immunity. I mean, that's when it's really an issue. Like when Europeans came over and were exposed to the American Indians, and then they were just decimated by smallpox. Part of that was there was no natural immunity. So I know there was some of that. But yeah, in 1924, there were 70 new cases in the week of June 17th, 70 new cases in the state. And we had 34 of those in Madison County. And there are 102 counties, so it's not like there were 36 in all 101 other counties and then 34 in ours. So it was a big deal, but not everybody treated it as a big deal. And so there was still a lot of, having to impose fines, having to threaten jail time if people didn't comply with quarantines, and well, that was the biggest one, quarantine or getting the vaccine in advance.
Well, that makes sense with smallpox, to be honest with you. And so with this, how did they combat it? Because I know that there was a pretty gruesome way of vaccinating yourself for smallpox, or getting vaccinated, that almost took a spore of somebody that had the disease and they put it into their body, correct?
Yeah, so I looked into what was on the John Adams.
Yeah, so was that close?
Yes, that was a piece of the history of it. So before they discovered a vaccine, which was in 1796. Okay. So in the 1770s, when John Adams' family was doing this, the way that you inoculated against smallpox was to, from what I understand, scrape the skin and then put in smallpox.
Yes. You were infecting yourself.
Yes. And I didn't realize this. I was reading about Jane Addams and talking about the family and stuff. And it took 4 times for some of the kids, because they didn't get any of the symptoms, and so they knew it hadn't taken. So they had to go back, do it again.
No.
It was horrific.
No.
Yeah,
way.
And it wasn't without a lot of fear, because there was no guarantee that you wouldn't die from it. You probably wouldn't die from it. It was much better than getting smallpox naturally. Right. But it was not a vaccine. It was an inoculation. And so, John Adams was apparently out of town when this was happening, and he was writing letters back and forth about how nervous he was. And Jane Addams, Abigail, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm saying
so
Jane,
it's fine,
Abigail.
but you're right.
Abigail Adams was talking about, how the kids were doing, and she used the word puke to talk about one of them, and I didn't know that I would have thought that was an anachronism. But,
well, so how did it evolve?
So then, this is one of those, couldn't happen today, probably shouldn't have happened the way that it did, but in 1796, an English doctor named Edward Jenner noticed that local milkmaids would get cowpox and then not get smallpox. And so, he noticed, but it was also sort of rumor around the community. So he took some cowpox from a cowpox pustule from local milkmaid, and gave it to an 8-year-old. The son of his gardener.
Not even his son. Yeah, the son of somebody else.
Your employee.
What a wonderful man.
Yeah. So not ideal. And then gets better. And then 2 months later, exposed him to smallpox to make sure that it would work. And he didn't get smallpox, or this would be a very different story.
That's an ask for forgiveness later type of thing.
And I don't know if he got permission from the family before he did that. And even in that situation, how much can you say no when your employer is hey, I'm going to do this to your kid? Was your employment contingent upon saying yes? I don't know. But anyway, it worked. Cowpox is similar enough to smallpox that became, for a period of time until the mid-1800s, that became the vaccine. And then they further developed I don't want to say what we use today, because we no longer have to get the vaccine, but what was used until it was eradicated. So that was one version of it. They also had a version where they're dry smallpox sores and crush them and blow it into people's noses.
I've seen people do worse with their noses.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that would be fine for some people. But yeah, so it was this very you see the step by step, and then now there are 2 places in the world that still have smallpox like active smallpox, and one is in Atlanta, and then the other one I think is in Russia. So it's the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia, and the State Research Center of Virology and Biotechnology in Russia. And those are because following the eradication, scientists and public health officials determined that we still needed to, be able to study this.
Yeah.
And if anything was ever used as like bioterrorism, we needed to know like what we were working with. So so those are the only two now. The last person that died of smallpox, like actually died of smallpox, was actually a medical photographer in 1978.
Oh, no.
Yeah, who worked above the like microbiology department where they were conducting smallpox research, and
Probably wasn't the smartest idea.
yeah, and it might have been like the air ducts or direct contact. Like they're not entirely sure, but that was in 1978. So even with that, it's been a while.
So just going back to your article here, take me through your poster that you used. Was this something that was like on display somewhere?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the most fun things that I've been learning about while I've been doing these articles is the WPA posters that the government essentially funded in mostly the 1930s. And so they have all kinds of really cool, there are art ones, there are library ones, there are ones related to public health. And so the one I used in the article is one of the ones that was done through the Food and Drug Administration through the WPA. And it's available at the Library of Congress website. Like you can go in, you can look at all of them. There are hundreds. You kind of get a sense of like what people were struggling with at that time. Like there have been a lot of posters about syphilis. So many syphilis posters. And syphilis is apparently big pox. Smallpox is called smallpox to designate it from syphilis, which was the big pox. And then when I was looking for the smallpox, I found all these syphilis posters, and it was a big thing that we were dealing with in the 1930s in the United States.
That's incredible. Wow. Well, now I'm looking here. I mean, this is pretty incredible. You were talking about the fines. It says that, you were getting hit with a $200 penalty, which would be $3,500.
Yes. If you did not report in Madison County in 1924, if you did not report that you had smallpox, that was the kind of fine you were going to face.
Now, how did parents react with their children around Alton?
Yeah, varying degrees of caution and compliance, I guess. So at one point, Irving School had about half the kids attending because the others were at home either in quarantine or because they were recovering from the vaccination or because their parents didn't want to have them get the vaccine. One interesting thing about the vaccine is that in order to determine that it had worked, you had to have a scar. Like they wanted to see your smallpox scar.
Oh, wow.
And so it was kind of an easy way to check if somebody, or you could have a certificate that said you had smallpox. So I guess as long as your doctor was willing to write that for you, you'd get it. But yeah, so it was, there's always controversy about things that you wouldn't expect there to be controversy about looking at it from our time period.
Right.
And then at the same time, like we can see the same sort of sentiments with stuff we've dealt with today.
Yeah, 100%. Now, when did the smallpox in the area kind of go away?
I think it like ebbed and flowed. I don't think that anyone died during this one of smallpox that I saw. Like some of the warnings said, people in Illinois have died of smallpox this year, which was a warning, but also doesn't have the same sort of gravity as if you're like 30% of Altonians who get this are dying.
Yeah.
So I think that was maybe part of why people were willing to comply, but they weren't like terrified of it. I mean, this is also coming right after World War I and right after
the flu,
the Spanish flu, exactly. And so that had been so devastating that I think that
numbness.
What
was it, like numbness almost?
It might have. I mean, it might have been, and it's not like they weren't taking it like the state was taking it seriously, the city was taking it seriously, but there's also there's that like that numbness, like you've been dealing with death and sickness and all kinds of stuff for quite a while at that point.
Right.
And so if no one's died, it's a little harder to, Yeah, 100%.
Now, Smallpox Island, does that have anything to do with this?
It has stuff to do this in that it was smallpox related. So that was during the Civil War.
Oh, okay.
So during the Civil War, we had just packed Confederate soldiers into a prison that wasn't even supposed to be in use at all anymore. So it had been the state prison. They closed it down, reopened it, and put more people in for the Civil War. And because everyone was in such close quarters, something like smallpox just decimates. And then that was the sort of situation where at least 30% of the people probably were dying.
Yeah.
And so they put everybody on Smallpox Island to quarantine them. But you weren't really leaving Smallpox Island for the most part. I don't think everyone died, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go get better.
Did they ever recover any of those bodies over there, or the bones still over?
Well, it's underwater now.
Is it? I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
With the way that the river has changed with dams and other things. So there are several monuments, and then we have records of like a lot of the people that were sent to Smallpox Island, stuff like that at the library. But yeah, I mean, that was a time when it was a huge issue. And I think part of that is just, well, it was earlier. It was the 1860s.
Do you know what's wild to me, though? That fast forward 100 years later, and we're literally could be going through something kind of similar. You know, I mean, we had the pandemic, with COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say in 4 years we don't get hit with some type of, you know what I'm saying? It's just so fascinating to me, though. Like in 1919, the Spanish flu hits the world, and in 2019, COVID hits. It's just, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. Don't take me as a tinfoil hat guy, please don't. But it is kind of fascinating.
Well, yeah, and I remember during the COVID pandemic that I was so focused on, wearing a mask and making sure that I was 6 feet from everybody and sanitizing everything that my brain kind of it shorted out on other things that would be dangerous. Mm-hmm. You're so focused on that you're not looking at other risks the same sort of way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, very fast. What are you writing about next week?
So, what's going to come out tomorrow?
Oh, tomorrow. Sorry, I lied to you.
No, that's okay. Is about a contest where local Boy Scouts, whatever troop of local Boy Scouts had the most. The way they said it was like promoted the most first class Scouts or something. It was basically like to the next level, to be an Eagle Scout or whatever the next level was for those boys. Won a trip to Lincoln's New Salem.
Oh.
But it was really confusing because they had just made it a state park and it didn't have any of the stuff yet. So it kept being referred to as Lincoln's Old New Salem. And for a while I was like, is it Old Salem? Is it New Salem? Like, what is this? But it was because it was literally just, they were going to go camp near where he had lived and then swim in the creek. But there was nothing else there. It was just...
I'll pass.
Yeah.
Lacy, I love chatting with you, and this was really insightful. If you guys haven't seen it yet, just go over to RiverBender.com. You can either type in Lacy McDonald's name or just type in smallpox or just go to the news section and see it there scrolling through and see the full write-up. But I'm really excited to keep talking to you about this.
Yeah, thanks.
Every Wednesday, and we're going to get an ironed-out time whenever the craziness of the schedule works down, and we'll come up with it. But next Wednesday, you join me again?
Yes, absolutely.
I love it. We'll take a quick break, but before I do, get your library card at HanerLibrary.org, and you can unlock the plethora of opportunity that awaits you. Like that word? I think that's a nice word. You can unlock the Library of Things, the Seed Library, ad-free, for free streaming with Biblio Plus, the Genealogy and Local History Department, where you can unlock your family's roots and their history. And, there was someone that was, that kind of, I don't want to put them on blast, but not going to say their name or anything, that kind of called us and said, I'm really having trouble finding my family.
Oh,
And first thought is reach out to Hayner's Genealogy Department and see if there's anything that you can find to help them kind of patch things together and put those pieces together. You're there to help.
Yes, and I think Sydney sent me an email last week. Yeah. Somebody called in, was trying to find their family history, and we were able to help them. I don't remember if we were able to help them with the exact thing that they wanted, but we were able to help them find the resources that they needed to continue their search. And
they'll do it for you too. HanerLibrary.org, HanerLibrary.org, and get that library card today.